everyone. This is Suzanne Letter from supercoder.com, where coding heroes are always welcome. Do not adjust your volume if you're used to hearing Jen Gaudreau, who has been doing these webinars beforehand. This is a different person. First, a little bio about me and why I'm talking to you today. I'm the editor of the OBGYN Coding Alert, but I've also written the Cardiology, Physical Medicine and Rehab, Orthopedic, Neurosurgery, and Gastroenterology Coding Alerts. I have a CPC and a COBGC. That was a difficult exam, let me tell you. I heartily respect all you coders out there with specialty credentials. That weird M.Phil credential is actually a Master's of Philosophy in Creative Writing, which I received from Trinity College, Dublin. So if you're at the National AAPC conference this year, you'll probably see me at the cocktail party. It's the Irish degree in me. Come by and say hello. I'm the one that looks like Christina Ricci. Okay, so let's get going. Why am I starting with the image of Edvard Munch's The Scream? Well, have you ever felt this way when you think about ICD-10? I've seen quite a few coders at conferences looking very worried. But there's another reason this painting is here. I've also included this painting because the year Munch painted this was the year the first incarnation of ICD, or the International Statistical Classification of Diseases and Related Health Problems, was introduced. But don't scream. Taking small steps now to accustom yourself and your physicians to ICD-10 means that you'll be ahead of the game before October 1st, 2013 hits. Remember, you won't have any grace period. FYI, I recently read this from Part B Insider. CMS's Stuart Strymer, during a CMS-sponsored Open Door forum, said, October 1st, 2013 is really the drop-dead date for those of you that have familiarized yourself with the final rule regarding ICD-10. But there are a lot of things that must happen before then, and I expect many of the payers may even require ICD-10 codes before then, so a sufficient amount of testing can take place. Sounds like we all better start getting to know the basics. Let's look at our agenda. First, we'll get to the crux of the issue, how this is going to affect you. We'll ask, why should you get to know ICD-10 codes now? How will this change your daily life? Why are we switching from ICD-9 to ICD-10? I'd like to briefly talk about the history of ICD so we can have an overview of how ICD has progressed from its first inception and why we shouldn't be afraid of this logical transition from ICD-9 to ICD-10. In addition, you'll see what other countries have already adopted ICD-10. Next, find out what you'll need to learn that's new for ICD-10. Your manual won't look the same as your ICD-9 one. But the good news is that you'll find out what coding conventions will remain the same. In other words, if you know ICD-9, then you won't have to relearn everything for ICD-10, which is a good thing. We'll go over some ICD-9 to ICD-10 examples so that you'll see what these changes look like. Finally, we'll discuss what action steps you should take right now. How will ICD-10 affect you? On the most basic level, you will have to throw out your ICD-9 book and start using a new one. I think we all know this. ICD-9 will grow from its current 17,000 codes to more than 141,000. Let's let that sink in for a moment. 17,000 codes to 141,000. Woo! But again, don't scream. Just as the size of a dictionary doesn't make the dictionary more difficult to use, a higher number of codes doesn't necessarily increase the complexity of the coding. In fact, greater specificity and clinical accuracy should actually make ICD-10 easier to use. For instance, and we'll go over some examples a bit later, we OBGYN coders are used to using V22.0 for supervision of a normal first pregnancy. It's probably automatic by now. But as of October 1st, 2013, we'll have 4 options instead of 1. We'll have to choose from some bizarre-looking Z34.XX codes and specify trimester, which is probably already in our physician's documentation. Does that make our payer understand more information about the patient? Yes. Still, that's definitely a shift in our daily coding rituals. Unfortunately, productivity in your practice will be an issue prior to and after implementation. It will take longer for you to code your claims in ICD-10 until you're finished with the learning curve. Imagine, too, that you're going to have to ask your physicians to clarify their documentation so you can get to that ultra-specific code. You'll probably see an increase in billing inquiries from payers. You'll also probably encounter an increased number of adjustments and pending or suspended claims. That's why getting a jump start is such a wise decision. The more you can streamline this, the more you can assist your practice's bottom line. Do you know that all of us who have a CPC will have to retake the diagnosis portion of the exam? I wish you could have seen my expression when I heard this. Needless to say, I wasn't too happy. I'm still recovering from the COBGC one. But I had to stop and look at it this way. If we begin learning ICD-10 now, then we'll be more in demand in the very near future. Being on the cutting edge means that you're more marketable in the medical coding healthcare field, which definitely seems like a good idea in the current economy. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, healthcare is the largest U.S. industry. Healthcare will generate 3 million new jobs through 2016, more than any other industry. So if you're ICD-10 trained, you'll have the advantage. A number of countries adopted Dr. Bertillon's systems, and in 1898, the American Public Health Association, that's the APHA, recommended that the registrars of Canada, Mexico, and the United States also adopt it. In 1938, the world realized that it needed a parallel classification system. Work by some members of a committee with representation from the United States, Canada, the United Kingdom, and the health section of the League of Nations produced a preliminary draft of a proposed statistical classification of diseases, injuries, and causes of death. In 1948, 3 years after World War II, we had ICD-6. But then the powers that be realized that we were using ICD more often with the indexing of hospital medical records. Because of that, we had non-fatal diseases, symptoms, and other classifications added to the next revisions. The World Health Organization eventually published ICD-9 in 1977. So the U.S. finally came to use ICD-9 in 1979. That means we've been using ICD-9 now for 31 years. So after all that, doesn't it seem like a natural progression to shift from ICD-9 to ICD-10? Work began on ICD-10 in 1983 and was completed in 1992. Obviously, adoption here in the U.S. has been slow, but other countries around the world have already begun using it. Australia, for instance, started using ICD-10 in 1998. Canada introduced ICD-10 in 2000. France began ICD-10 in 2005. Other countries who use ICD-10 include Germany, Korea, Sweden, and Thailand. Sounds like we need to catch up, doesn't it? So what's so bad about ICD-9? It makes sense that we're shifting to a new diagnosis system. Perhaps we should examine why ICD-9 needs to be changed. Frankly, ICD-9 is running out of room. Let's think about what running out of room means. The first digit of an ICD-9 code is a number, which limits code options. For instance, the code for osteoporosis is 733.01. So that's what's current right now. The 7 is the first digit. In ICD-9, we can only go from 0 to 9 in that first digit. In ICD-10, you'll report M81.0 for osteoporosis. The M is the first digit, meaning that we can go from A to Z before we even tap into the numbers. Also new for ICD-10 is the expansion of 5 digits to 7 digits. I know, that's not exactly ideal. I myself have a hard time trying not to swap numbers in a 5-digit code. With the letters, though, we may not find this so difficult. Let's look at the 7-digit example. Abrasion of unspecified hand initial encounter. That will be S60.519A. Abrasion of an unspecified hand subsequent encounter will be S60.519D. We still have the 5 digits inside the letter, so that's how I'm going to tell myself it won't be too hard to learn. So what's so great about ICD-10 besides it having more room for growth? Well, we're going to have more info relevant to ambulatory and managed care. We're going to have combo codes for diagnoses and symptoms. And here's the benefit to you. It'll reduce the number of diagnosis codes you have to report to describe a specific condition. For instance, right now, if a patient has severe sepsis with shock, you would have to report 995.92 severe sepsis and 785.52 septic shock.